Manhwa title in the right corner of the screen. Enjoy watching. Marriage is a cemetery of hopes. Initially, this phrase did not have such a bad meaning. But for the main character of this story, marriage is not a joy in life, but a symbol of misfortune. Uncomfortable family life. The relationship between husband and wife is getting worse every day. You have to pretend to be nice, no matter how you are used. But in return, you get disgusted by your own children. Raven doesn't plan on living in such a hell, so he enjoys a wonderful life alone, ignoring the sadness of his friends. However, the carefree happiness, the happy time he had, was about to evaporate. Children. A girl has appeared, known in the Empire for her cruelty, who really wants to marry him and make him kneel. It all started a few months ago. Raven has been having the same dream for a long time, about how he proposes to a strange girl to marry. And every time he wakes up, he has the feeling that this is not just a dream but a prophetic dream. Raven really doesn't want this dream to ever come true. After all, this marriage proposal goes against his principles. The butler entered the room, and from his face, Raven immediately understood that something had happened. It turned out that his father had called him to him. Raven quickly got ready and went to the office. His father got straight to the point. He wanted Raven to marry Lady Charlene. It was more like a joke. Raven was sure that her father chose her because Charlene was born into a ducal family of healers who are responsible for healing and cleansing the entire empire. On the other hand, the Duke's family of deer. Raven and his family fight monsters and are constantly injured, so the reason why his future wife was chosen is obvious. There's just one problem. This girl is known for making men cry. Raven has never met Lady Charlene in person, but she is too well known in society. She's a very beautiful lady, but her character is terrible. She is known as a girl who hates men and loves to bully them. But even so, she is still popular. So why did she agree to marry Raven? She is known as the person who makes men cry, and Raven is known for making girls cry. They are complete opposites. They both didn't want to be in a serious relationship, and they were both famous throughout the empire. And instead of a friendly conversation, he was sure that she would want to kill him. But Father holds on, said that everything has already been decided, and it was the Emperor's order, so Raven will not be able to break the engagement, as he did before. Raven was surprised. Why does Dad do this? He knows that he likes free relationships and does not want to get married. And then the Duke said that if his son broke off the engagement, then his sister would have to be married to the Marquis of L. Raven couldn't set up his sister. After all, this Marquis is a real pervert, and there is too big an age difference, but apparently, the father is ready to do anything just to please the Emperor. Raven didn't want to sacrifice his sister, but he didn't want to marry the lady either. However, he had to make a choice. Suddenly, the butler came and announced that Lady Charlene had just arrived and was waiting in the gazebo located in the garden. Raven wasn't prepared for such a quick meeting, but his father had planned to hide everything from him until the very end, and now it was no longer possible to ignore the lady. Raven hurried into the garden. In fact, it was interesting to know what this girl looked like. When he saw the lady, he was shocked, because the figure that stood in front of him looked exactly the same as the girl from his dream. They were so similar that Raven wondered if this really was a prophetic dream. But, putting these thoughts aside, he met Lady Estella Charlene, and they sat down at the table. The lady's gaze gave the impression of being an icy lady. But Raven thought that she was not as bad as they said. Now he wanted to somehow come to an agreement with her and asked what she thought about their engagement. The lady said she wasn't against the engagement at all. Raven didn't believe her. How could a girl who hated men want to marry such a lecherous guy? He asked the reason. The lady stood up abruptly and walked towards him. She said that the reason she wanted to marry him was to make him kneel. Raven was so surprised that he even became embarrassed, causing his face to turn red. And the lady was surprised by his reaction, because contrary to rumors, he turned out to be very naive and very much like a puppy. This made her want to tease him even more. He decided to ignore this and return to the main topic. He was against this engagement and did not understand why the lady agreed to the marriage. Then he heard the phrase that girls tell him most often, that they like him. Ladies often confess to Raven. However, he saw the true feelings hidden behind the goodwill. Often they were ugly, so he always refused. But people still admired him. After all, if they could marry Raven, they would be safe. He had a lot of money, and he was a knight. But the most important advantage is its unique beauty. Everyone was so eager to make him their man, and Raven was disgusted by this. Lady Estrella and the people around her do not change. Raven did not understand her intentions and why she tried to get closer to his family, but she definitely cannot marry him. Raven decided that he would never marry the girl who loved him, and he announced it to the whole world. Now Charlene, he said the same thing and didn't want to talk to her anymore. However, when he left, he still kept thinking about her. After all, she was an incredible girl. That's why he never wanted to see her again. Before he could reach home, he felt terrible pain and ill due to his illness. A minute later, he came to his senses again and asked the knight next to him how the situation was in the zone. The first unit that went to check the forbidden area reported that they had encountered high-class monsters. The squad Raven sent to the forbidden area should have been able to easily deal with the destruction of the monsters, and so far no monsters have appeared after being enslaved. But strong monsters appeared at unknown intersections, so Raven decided to go and help immediately. And the squad barely held on until the captain arrived. They should be strong, but fear of the monsters gripped them. Raven showed up just in time. As soon as he arrived, the entire squad breathed a sigh of relief. Now, it wouldn't be so hard for them to survive. Raven is incredibly strong because he has the power of a guardian. With several squads, he dealt with the monsters very quickly and no one died, but there were severe injuries. Raven ordered the injured to be taken to the estate as quickly as possible, where they would receive help. But suddenly everything around began to glow, and petals began to fly in the air. People didn't understand what was happening, and then they saw Lady Charlene. She said that after talking to Raven, she was going to go home, but she heard him talking about monsters. So she used this teleportation to see everything for herself. She looked at the seriously wounded people and knew what to do. Using his power, all the victims were cleared of the bad energy of the monsters and severe wounds in a couple of seconds. Raven was seeing her power for the first time, and it was wonderful. The healers from the Duke are experienced users of divine power, but this lady has such a huge divine power that she can easily change the situation in just a few seconds. Suddenly, a monster, unnoticed by the knights, made its way towards her and was about to attack the lady. But she didn't look scared at all and just slapped the monster. He flew to the side and did not understand what was happening. Then she continued to simply beat this monster with her hands, who could do nothing against her. All the knights watched this in shock. Obviously, this girl didn't need help. And then, when she finished, she said that her hobby was killing monsters. Some of the knights were so shocked that they thought they were hallucinating. How could a girl kill monsters with a slap? Even the captain was surprised. More and more thoughts about this girl and who she was appeared in his head. He accidentally met her eyes. And after that, Estella quickly approached him, taking his hand. She promised that she would always protect him, so she proposed marriage. Thanks to her public proposal that day, his life changed completely. The knights literally forced the captain to marry this girl. And wherever he went, everyone said, "Lord Raven must marry Estella Charlene." Whatever he did, he was reminded of it everywhere. His knights became followers and fans of Miss Estella and did not give him peace. And yet Raven only thought of one thing: this amazing power of this girl. Her divine power should only heal, but how could she destroy the monster? Divine power is a special energy that can fight monsters and injuries, unlike magic that anyone can use. Only the descendants of two great ducal families can use this power, the Deer Knight family. And the Charlene family of healers, there was no one who could use both powers, except for one person. This is the saint who saved the empire long ago. Raven was once again offered a contract marriage, and he agreed to meet Charlene. This time they decided to meet in a public place, and Raven didn't expect the girl to come to meet him before him. But she said that she had also just arrived and had not waited long for him. This is a place with a cozy atmosphere, where they prepare rare tea depending on the season, and they also cook very tasty. Raven was talking about this, but then he noticed Estella's gaze. And he explained to us that he only knew this because his sister told a very popular girl. So he suggested getting down to business, discussing the marriage contract. Estella said that she would participate in the subjugation of demons. This is a mandatory condition, and as for the other conditions, the marriage will be valid until Raven receives the Kirch title, and Estella will have to renounce his property and rights as a duchess. Raven didn't understand what benefits she got from this contract, because these conditions were too good for him, but Estella decided it herself. What made him suspect she might be up to something? This girl was known to hate men, but she wanted to marry Raven, lied to her love for the sake of a goal, and then offered him a dark contract with perfect terms. Raven agreed to this contract because with this power his knights would not be in danger. Finally, he decided to say that according to rumors, he plays with the feelings of girls. There is a possibility that he will take a mistress while he is married to Estella, and will not be able to make her happy, so will she regret marrying such a man? The graves of someone dear to her appeared in her memories, and then she replied that she had lost a lot of things, so she was tired of worrying so much. She won't regret marrying him. Then they both signed the contract. Raven seems kind, but has a special mood that does not allow anyone to cross the line. Estella read him like an open book. His cold gaze, hidden behind a smile, made her even a little wary. But there is a reason why she needs to be with him. And now she can finally continue to implement her plan. She had just signed the contract with magic, and Raven wanted to stop her, but he didn't have time. He asked why she did it because now if she broke her promise, she would have to pay for it. Estella was even surprised. She thought that Raven was a hungry man, but now he was angry and worried about her. Although before that he hated her. Estella pulled him close. He had asked her earlier if she would regret it, but he had other things to worry about. Estella was sure Raven would fall in love with her. She said it so playfully right in his ear, which made him jump away from her again like a puppy. This reaction greatly amused the lady. In fact, Raven was the one who first said that line about Estella falling in love with him, and she remembered this with sadness. And in the evening, everyone was already discussing the upcoming wedding of Lord Raven and Lady Charlene. The servants were especially happy, because finally the mistress would appear together. However, Mr. Raven has a girl who is rumored to be his favorite, and Lady Charlene probably doesn't know about it. At night, the same girl who wants rumors came to Raven's room. A smile appeared on his face because he was waiting for her. This is Catherine. She was very annoyed when she came here and she wasn't going to wait for Raven to finish her paperwork. Catherine isn't really a girl. She's a guy who has to dress like a girl to come and treat Raven. He asked for it himself because there was a day when people almost found out about it. The next time the treatment was taking place, the knights entered Raven's room. He had to put Kate underneath him and pretend that he was doing something with the girl. From that moment on, he began asking Kate to dress like a girl when he came to treat her. The guy, of course, was irritated. But Raven hides from everyone that he needs treatment, so he dragged Kate into this scam. But thanks to this treatment, he is no longer sick and feels well, or so he told Kate. But the guy found out that this was because Raven was not a good liar. Kate cast a healing spell on him again to make it easier. Even when he told him not to use his divine power, Raven never listened. Only the direct descendants of the Deer family possess the seal that designates them as guardians, and such people possess enormous divine power, incomparable to other people. One person is capable of destroying hundreds of monsters, and that's what makes it so hard to heal him. Raven knows that using his godly powers can be fatal for him, but he still uses them to protect his people as long as he has the power. As a result, he sacrifices himself to save the lives of others, and of course, so that no one finds out, he secretly undergoes treatment. Very soon the day came when the butler Henry had already said 100 times how wonderful this day was. And all because he waited for this moment for a very long time and even began to call Raven Little Duke. Such an old man simply felt relieved that the child he raised would not die alone. Raven wasn't at all thrilled that we would be bringing seedlings to this girl who was so outspoken and defied common sense. But the butler kept insisting on how unique and beautiful she was. Raven couldn't even imagine how she would act towards someone she truly loved if she told a stranger at their first meeting that she wanted to bring him to his knees. The lady was already on her way to her fiancé, and in the carriage she was reading a very fascinating book. This book gives advice on how to make an unapproachable person fall in love with you, and she followed all the advice in this book. First, make an unforgettable first impression. Then she showed him what she was capable of and surprised him with her powers. And the third step was that they had to have an exciting time behind closed doors. But Estella didn't know how to do it because Raven behaved like a wild animal when they were alone, so he would definitely avoid meeting in a closed room. Estella even thought about creating one. Perhaps it would help solve the problem. This girl only knows about love from romance novels. She finally arrived at the Duchy of Deer. Raven came out to personally greet her. As soon as the carriage doors opened, he ran up and picked up Estella in his arms, with a bright smile on his face, telling her how he had been waiting for his dear wife. However, in reality, it was just a performance that he had planned in advance. The day before, he learned the reactions of those around him to his engagement. There were people who were very happy, and on the other hand, many young men were very worried about this engagement because they knew the rumors about the lady. However, it was not enough to cause any harm. But Raven still had to get rid of the evil rumors because he knew that the same thing always happened. His mother, Duchess of Gyor, had bad rumors. Even when she gave birth to a child, everyone said that the Duke hated his wife. Although she was the flower of the empire who conquered the hearts of many men, and now she has become only a disgrace. However, no one condemned the Duke. These girls condemned only the Duchess and laughed at her because many men had feelings for her. But the man she loved did not love her back. Raven had seen this since he was a child, and even though his mother had been so against these rumors, he still didn't want the same thing to happen to his wife. Of course, Estella will definitely be the target of such rumors because she is not very good at communicating. Raven decided to strengthen the security of the mansion and make sure that his wife could spend her time without any inconvenience. And he began his performance at the moment when the lady arrived at the duchy. He wanted to show everyone how much he loved his wife. So even Estella was shocked. All the servants thought they were just hearing it. But no. Raven continued to act politely but also courteously with the lady, showing his respect and love. The rumors that had been going on in this place for a long time were simply delightful. Raven and the lady walked around the place like a proper couple. But as soon as they entered the room and the doors closed, they immediately went their separate ways with indifferent faces. Raven almost stopped breathing, and Estella wanted to say the same thing. Then they decided to talk about what happened. And first, Raven cast a soundproofing spell on the room. He walked away a few meters and said that now they could start talking. The lady laughed at this. He was acting like he was afraid she would bite, and he was too far away to talk. He said it was a great distance, and when she got closer to him, he just moved back. After a few of these movements, she realized that she would have to continue the conversation at such a distance with this Mr. Puppy. And he was very grateful to her for her understanding. After all, he wanted to stay away from this villainous miss. He really was so annoying. The only good thing about him was his cute face. They began to talk. Estella said that his behavior was disgusting, but Raven explained that he was going to continue to behave like that because he wanted to avoid false rumors. It was certainly better than being treated badly, but the lady could see that he was uncomfortable. And if he continued to behave like this, there would be rumors that he was madly in love with Estella, when in fact, he doubted her. But he was fine with all of this because there was a clear contract between them. Although he pretended to be in love with Estella while many people were watching them in order to protect her from the horrible rumors, in reality, this act does not have much meaning to her. However, she is the only one who expects the unprecedented kindness he will show. She wonders if he is a good-natured man or an idiot. Estella asks if he is acting like this, then is spending his wedding night with her also part of his plans. Raven fell for her trick so cutely again and blushed. The Raven Knights were sure that he had gone mad. The second squad leader, Daniel, convinced everyone of this. The third squad leader, Asher, was thinking about it too. But the commander of the first squad, Theo, was sure that Raven and the lady were simply in love with each other. In any case, they will be able to find out about it very soon. Now they came to their commander's room and saw that soundproofing magic had been cast there. Daniel, this only intrigued him, so he opened the doors to ask the commander why he was hiding in the middle of the day. Everyone else came into the room, and only then saw that their commander was very close to the lady. The knights blushed and immediately left the room. Of course, they didn't have to explain anything. Raven was desperate because he was not left here alone with this villainess. The knights looked into the room again and told the captain that if a man invited a girl to his place, he must take responsibility. And after that, they all decided to have a real feast and drinking party. And what did you notice? That the commander was somehow taking too long to be offended. So everyone started giving him advice on how to feel better, like believing a lot and pumping up his muscles. Raven was just starting to get distracted from everything that had happened when Theo asked him when he was going to have a baby. Theo promised that he would love the commander's child equally, whether it was a boy or a girl. Raven just said that he wasn't in the kind of relationship with the lady that everyone thought he was. He just didn't want to be like his parents. And when Genya wanted to build the happiest family in the world, there were times when he thought so, until he learned his fate that day. He read in a book that a person who received the seal of a parent as payment would live a short life. Raven no longer saw the point in having a happy family, because there was no point in being with those who would love him. In the near future, he would die. After the ancestors founded the empire, monsters and miasma suddenly began to appear. The entire continent was plunged into chaos, and when everyone was in despair, the Great Saint and the Guardian Knight appeared, these protective barriers that drove away the monsters. And now, people are protected by the Charlene family, which is responsible for cleansing from miasmas and healing, and also the Deer family, which provides protection and subjugation to the monsters. Conquering monsters has always been about this from the perspective of party members. If these powerful divine powers were to participate in the rankings, it would be much easier to handle. And so, in the end, Lady Estella wanted the knight's uniform and went with Raven and the squad leaders on a great journey. Raven and Estella will be killing monsters, but the problem is that all the knights have started to romanticize it. Raven had to be reminded that this wasn't a festival, but a monster-slaying event. Lady can destroy monsters with just a slap. She might as well destroy monsters instead of healing. But Raven said that everything would be the same as before. A support squad would come to the knights and help them, and they would continue to destroy monsters. But when Estella and Raven were alone, she said that it really would have been faster if she had participated in the destruction of monsters too. Raven knew that it would be much more effective to join forces with them to conquer the monsters. But what would happen to these knights after the lady left? They would quickly get used to such support, and then it would be a big blow to them. Therefore, it will be more beneficial if the ladies cooperate and support. Raven puts his life in her hands so that she will protect him as promised. So he drew a line and reminded them that their contract was only temporary. Today was the first time the knights had so much fun killing monsters, because the lady killed the monsters with her bare hands in one hit when they attacked the support squad. She paid close attention to the participants' movements and supported them accordingly. Thanks to this, the subjugation of monsters became better than before. Raven looked at her because he wanted to thank her. But the lady thought that he was unhappy with her killing the monsters because she shouldn't have tried to stand out. Raven thanked her for saving the lives of the team's doctors. When the hike was over, Raven told everyone to go to the support squad to be cleansed of the corruption. Estella decided that she would cleanse Raven herself. He refused at first, but she insisted that she would do it. Then he simply extended his hand to her so that she could take care of him and clean him. But when it comes to cleansing and healing, the wider the area of contact with the skin, the more effective it is. So when it was already dark, they retired, and Raven took off the top of his clothes. Estella used this moment to check on his health. She noticed that his magical shell was a little rough and he was sleeping very little. So she told him to get more rest. Raven continued to blush and flinch at every touch, so she continued to do it on purpose to watch his embarrassed face. She used to feel a little uncomfortable when she was with him. So many girls were in love with Raven that even the neighboring countries knew about it. They dreamed of being in his arms at least once. There were rumors about him, both good and bad. He was also called a terrible person who did not respect the girls he dated. But no matter how bad the rumors were, his popularity did not subside. Estella actually believed the rumors that were circulating about him in high society. But now, watching his reaction as she lightly touched his body to cleanse, she realized that it was all better and asked, "Is he still a virgin?" Soon, when night fell, they moved to his room. Estella took a proactive stance and guided Raven to learn what to do for the first time. Raven was embarrassed and asked her to stop, but she continued to take off her clothes, and then he screamed loudly. Thanks to his scream, he was able to wake up and it all turned out to be just a dream. Raven breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that he had just been asleep and none of this had happened. He almost cried. Kate was nearby and thought he was just having a nightmare, but he soon found out about everything that happened. Kate said that Raven was even lucky that his fiancée found out he was a virgin now. The reason he took advantage of the rumors that the womanizer liked to play with girls was to avoid marriage. But now that he was already engaged to that girl, there was no need for that. It was good that she knew the truth. But Raven was starting to worry that now that she knew his secret, she would laugh at him for not having any experience, and then she would actually make him kneel. Raven even told Kate about these experiences, but the guy said that he was not going to lend him a helping hand and believed that there would definitely be no problems. But Raven was just scared because she found out the whole truth. They talked some more, and after some time, Kate finally left the room. Estella was just walking down the hallway, but she saw this moment. And of course, she had thoughts and questions about who this girl was. It's been 2 weeks since Estella moved to Duke Deer's mansion. Thanks to Raven's plan, her life is very peaceful. Now their relationship had reached the point where they called each other by their first names. Estella thought they were throwing off and watching Raven's reaction. She realized that he had never really fallen in love, and therefore the rumors about him were only half true. The maid noticed that Lydia seemed restless, and then Estella was able to mention that she had seen a woman in Raven's bedroom the night before. The maid came to take away that she knew nothing about it for the sake of her master, and so as not to upset the lady. But Estella noticed this reaction and immediately understood everything. This servant did not tell about her master's fidelity without permission, so she has something to be proud of. Estella praised this servant and was also glad to know that she probably served Raven. Now this girl looked and there as if she really loved her fiancé, although there were rumors that it was not true. If it was such a kind expression on her face, Estella had been thinking about that girl all day. Obviously, Raven didn't have that kind of relationship with that girl. Well, if a rival appears, Estella doesn't want to lose. After all, she is the one who is called the cruelest girl in the Empire, and for the first time she wondered, is there even a girl who would be better than her? Then she decided to take some action, and through the window in the corridor she saw knights training. Raven, as the commander, was responsible for this, so he trained with the others. Now he was on a break, and it was at this moment that Estella arrived. He had not expected to see her here and immediately became wary. She came to propose that they have lunch together today. It was not difficult to fulfill. However, she came to him with more than just this proposal. She asked if he wanted to go on a date with her tomorrow. Raven thought seriously when it comes to dating, and everyone is happy to talk about them, to go somewhere to lunch together. Even now, some knights were discussing a date with their girlfriends, and they all, as one, said that at the end of their missions they had a hot night. Raven remembered that very dream, and building a logical chain, he realized that if he went on a date with Estella, she would definitely do it to him. He blushed deeply at the realization. As soon as she found out that he was a virgin, she immediately asked him out on a date, and now he has bad thoughts about her. Given the lady's eccentric behavior so far, his answer is obviously no. He began to justify himself by saying that he was not afraid of the date with her, that he had a lot of things to do tomorrow, and with that, he decided to leave very quickly. But she grabbed him by a piece of clothing so he couldn't escape no matter how hard he tried. He had serious questions about her strength. Was she really a gorilla? And now she asked again, and he asked whether he was really busy tomorrow. Raven is not a good liar, so he told her that he really was free tomorrow. He agreed to meet her tomorrow, but only on the condition that they return to the mansion before 7 p.m. She thought it was curfew at the Gear estate. But in fact, he had deliberately chosen this time so that she would not have time to attack him. She agreed, but they had to make promises to each other. He thought she wanted to seal the oath with blood, but she explained that they had simply shaken little fingers. But she said that now it was an oath, and if he broke it, he would be in trouble. Then, when she left alone, he plunged into memories. Raven once said that usually when you swear, you cut your finger. When you do that, it seems like even the smallest promise is something important. As he said, it was a small promise because Estella loved him so much. For the first time in a long time, such a smile appeared on her face. And Raven spent the whole day in tension because he couldn't think of where to go on a date. There were many options, for example, taking a boat ride on the lake, which is known for its beautiful landscapes, or watch an opera, which is popular now, or visit a cafe and just eat. It was all so difficult that he even forgot about work. But Kate was standing next to him, constantly reminding him that he needed to work. Asher came to tell about the investigation of the third squad. As expected, a pool of miasma formed in the Forbidden Zone, from which monsters happily crawled out. This phenomenon is rare. The last time something like this happened was 60 years ago. And if things are left as is, monsters will appear more often. A pool of miasma is also called a sign that something strange is going to happen. The code in which it happened would be very unpleasant. Therefore, it is necessary to take immediate measures. For example, put up a barrier, deal with a puddle, so that the monsters do not appear anymore. Then they decided to go and do it tomorrow. But Raven remembered that he was busy tomorrow, so he decided to go there alone now. Kate was surprised and unhappy because he knew that the more guardians use their powers, the more he would have to spend his powers on healing. But he promised Estella to go on a date with her tomorrow. In the end, he preferred her over destroying monsters. Asher began to worry about his commander, knowing that the rumors that he was a womanizer were false, and he even offered to provide him with a guide on how to behave on a date. Raven was grateful for such kindness, but decided that he could handle it himself and adjusted the forbidden area. Even though Asher was refused, he still decided to prepare the manual and bring it to Raven because it was interesting. Raven quickly arrived at the forbidden area and found this pool of miasma. It was the first time he had seen it, but he understood it immediately. Then, using his guardian power, he sealed it. The danger of monsters appearing disappeared, but to completely eliminate the danger, you will have to ask Charlene's family for purification. But for now, there is something more interesting. Raven is going to start hunting all these monsters that are lurking. We are waiting for the exchange to attack him. Having completely finished with the help of teleportation, he returned back to his office. Kate stayed there all this time and waited for the master to return. Raven told him to go and rest, but Kate knew he would have to help with the healing. Even now, Raven tried to look healthy, keeping his expression, but it was useless because he was already on the edge. Kate immediately began to heal and asked why he was straining himself so much. He could have gone on a mission another day. Kate was right. This time, it was a very urgent matter, so it was better to reschedule the task for another day. But Raven didn't want to break his promise. He is also confused. Why did he go to such extremes to keep his promise? And so, the next day, he was already completely second. Together with Estella in the same carriage, they were going on a date. For some reason, she just didn't look at him, which was awkward. And she just sat there silently, not knowing what to do. Of course, she hoped she wasn't thinking about anything bad. However, she was just thinking, why did she decide to open her favorite book again? How to make an unapproachable person fall in love with you. She read step 3 again. When the mind made contradictions, it was necessary to spend exciting time behind closed doors. And she looked at Raven again. She asked him, "Doesn't your heart flutter when you look at me?" But he was only scared, not understanding what she meant. She even approached him to hear his heartbeat, but it was normal. Then doubts arose that she had made the wrong move for an unforgettable impression. Or maybe that level of stimulation wasn't enough for Raven, who had played with many girls. Then she thought about zooming in on their faces like in those romance novels. And while she was thinking about this, it all happened when the carriage suddenly rocked violently, and they were both sitting on the same side. Raven flew straight at Estella. Well, to keep her from hitting herself, I had to carefully put my hand under her head and lean on the wall of the carriage. He apologized for it, but Estella had only one question. Did his heartbeat quicken at that moment? Raven just laughed. What? When I'm with you, no matter how white my heart is, it's not enough? They arrived at the best boutique in the South. This place is the most popular store, rumors of which have reached the imperial capital. Viscountess Ada Blau, the boutique's owner and designer, often saw Raven and was familiar with him. Therefore, she was very interested in meeting his fiancé. Raven activated the public mode and began to say that he came here to give his wife a beautiful dress and also wanted to choose the design of the costumes for the banquet. While the guests were being escorted to the waiting area, the Viscountess noticed that everyone had started talking about Lady Charlene. They were sure that she was selfish and easily angered if she didn't like something. Moreover, with the support of the Dyer family, she could completely brush off anything she didn't like from the earth. Madame had heard rumors about the lady, and if it was true, she would have to be very careful not to offend her. Why did she bring it to the lecture, and Estella went to try on the dress, and Raven, while he waited, chose jewelry. As soon as he saw Estella in the new dress, which perfectly emphasized her figure, he was very impressed. But the only thing he could say was that she looked like a very cute gorilla. He couldn't tell her the truth because he was embarrassed. Estella didn't let it go unnoticed and came closer to him. She said that he was crazy if he called a girl a gorilla, and maybe he needed a knock on the head to make him normal. He also found an answer to this, and their cute quarrel continued. Madame, observing this, realized that the rumors circulating about this couple were not true, and in fact they were getting along well. She went away to get another dress, but Estella said there was no need, she was just about to return. And what Raven said earlier, that this is a minimum commitment. Estella said that if this is how he tries to protect her, then in the future it will be useless. But Raven did this not out of obligation but as a sign of gratitude, because she saved the lives of the squad members. Besides, she came from the north, and there might not be many dresses suitable for Kiliman, so he wanted to give her a gift. In fact, the dress Estella wore yesterday must be too hot in the south at this time of year. She could have used it as an excuse to ask for a new dress, but she said she didn't need any clothes and only one outfit would do. Raven convinced her that there was no need to worry about money, because the Deer family did not have such problems, and even in her entire life she would not be able to spend all the money. Even if he bought all the products in that store, it wouldn't make any difference, so he would be happy if she accepted the gifts without hesitation and chose something else. Estella remembered this and said to him, "Don't complain later." When Raven first met her, he thought she was an arrogant young lady. Now that he sees her awkward aside, he wants to get to know her better. Now he began to think that he really had problems with his head. Remembering how she left and her beautiful long hair, an idea came to him. When he saw the decoration, the hairpin, he thought it would suit Estella perfectly. She decided to touch his hair, so he put this on her, and she looked beautiful with it. When he complimented her, she even felt embarrassed for a second, but then Raven said that it was the hair accessory that looked great, not her. The compliment was directed at the hair clip. It was not worth it to mock her like that. In the end, he got punched in the face and they left that boutique. He ended up buying all the clothes she tried on and his nose still hurt after she hit him. She could have cast healing magic, but he decided the blow was deserved. Now they could have gone to a cafe, but Estella went to a certain place that she had learned about in advance. As they walked down the street, everyone greeted Raven, and the girls immediately began to discuss him. But Estella didn't care about this. She was carried away by looking. The atmosphere was very different from the north. Ever since she found out Raven liked this place, she wanted to visit it. A couple of lovers walked past them, unable to keep their hands off each other and constantly flirting. Estella noticed that those people were holding hands and decided to do the same. She was the one who took the initiative, as usual, but Raven reacted too rudely when she touched his arm. He said it was because her hands were cold, but it sounded like a complaint. And Estella just walked forward. She wasn't going to force him to hold hands. As she walked around looking at the different goods in the market, one of the sellers recognized her as Lady Charlene. Because he said this, everyone immediately started paying attention and surrounded her. There were both good and bad rumors, but generally everyone was happy that such a beautiful person became a duchess. Then they saw Raven and the lady. Everyone looked so cute together and everyone started complimenting them. This was the first time that Estella had been treated with kindness by so many people, and she didn't even know what to say back. Because she remained silent for too long, some girls started saying that she apparently didn't want to talk to commoners. And in general, she somehow reminds me of a witch. This word is a trigger for Estella. She immediately remembered the situation when everyone called her a witch, and that it was because of her that the monster appeared. So she needed to be sacrificed so that the monster would eat her. Estella was struggling to control herself, and Raven showed up just in time. He had a sweet smile on his face, and even though it was just an act, it made her feel better. He said he was glad she was becoming more popular, but he had a date now, so he asked no one to keep them waiting. Some people felt guilty for what they said, but most just walked away so as not to disturb the couple. Estella realized that there are good people after all, and then they went to the fountain, where they could rest for a while. Raven was afraid that there might be a scandal because someone called Estella a witch, but she said nothing. Moreover, at that moment it seemed as if she had given up the whole house, and that it would be pointless to say anything in response. Raven apologized for leaving her alone, even for a short time. He knew everyone here from childhood and should have told her beforehand so that it would be easier for Estella to talk to them. She didn't blame him for anything. Suddenly, Raven gave her a plush mug that looked a lot like Estella. This stuffed cat was indeed very similar, and as soon as Raven noticed this toy, he immediately bought it. There are so many interesting things to see here, so he suggested that they go and see them together to continue the date. She took his hand, and they really had fun after that. There were times when Estella, of course, admired his face as the Empire's greatest womanizer, and it was already getting close to sunset, so they were getting ready to return home. Estella thought about today, about how she had been drowning in his kindness, and she decided to ask him why he was so kind to her. But then, hearing the words spoken from his lips, Estella did not yet know that she would regret it. So she asked him why he was so kind to her like he was today, even if he didn't trust her completely. Raven really can't trust her because he doesn't know the reason why she decided to marry him, and he really wanted to know the truth. But in this way, he escaped from answering the question, and Estella really wanted to know about his kindness. Raven apologized for not telling him earlier, but the reason for his kindness was because Estella was treated very well by the knights. She had cleaned everyone up yesterday. Kate told about this when Raven went to the forbidden area. The lady cleared all the members of the squad. She decided to cooperate so late. She wanted to cleanse Raven too, so she said she would wait for him to arrive. But Kate told her to go to bed and couldn't tell her that the Duke had seizures. Having observed her until now, Raven came to the conclusion that whatever her intentions were, she was not trying to antagonize the knights. Besides, lately he feels like he can't leave her alone. It's very similar to catching a stray cat. The reason he has such an easy time interacting with Estella is because she doesn't like him. He is very glad that there are no romantic feelings between them. If she had liked him from the beginning, they would never have entered into a contract marriage. After all, he had decided for himself not to marry the girl who loved him. But Estella asked, what if she really fell in love with him? Raven startled her with his cold answer. If such a moment came, then the contractual relationship would be terminated. That's what he said. And that night, Estella cried into her pillow, but she was more angry. He says he wants to know the reason why she wanted to marry him, but he wouldn't believe it even if she told the truth. The truth is that she wanted to marry him so much because they were a couple in a past life. If she told him the truth, he would think she was crazy. Now this man is more careful than in his past life. A year ago, when there was a banquet in honor of the Empire Day, Estella remembered her previous life, the night she first saw Raven. That day was no exception when she was tired of the boring time spent at the banquet. And she was bored, so she decided to go home. But she heard the surprised voices of people who were talking about the fact that Mr. Raven had come. If there was, she decided to look at the eldest child of the Dior family, who was surrounded by a crowd of people. Estella completely understood why he was in this position, because she often did similar things, trying to convince someone so that everyone would be in a great mood. But when he turned slightly and their eyes met, at that moment time seemed to stop. Estella literally remembered her entire past life in a second. She remembered how they were lovers and how they had a good time together. And she also realized the sense of loss that had been gnawing at her heart for no reason until now. Now it was filled with longing, and Estella felt joy in it. She kept looking at Raven, but why did he forget all those wonderful moments and just ignore her? Estella wanted to meet him so much, but that day she couldn't even talk to him and just ran away, crying. He's such an idiot. Despite everything, she would like to meet him. Now that she sees him in front of her, she gets scared. If he had those memories too, he would probably say that he hates her. In fact, Estella didn't even realize that she was already forgetting about it. But it didn't matter anymore. She is here because she lost everything for his happiness. But when she came here, she was happy just to be near him, and she decided to live to make amends to him. And she thought that this was her punishment for her greed. The next day at the training ground, Raven watched the training closely to choose a knight and a maid for his wife. And the knights and squad leaders happily discussed and told the knights what happened yesterday and how Raven spent his date with his wife. The knights who accompanied the meetings watched closely and were now able to tell others everything. Daniel was the first to fall under Raven's heavy hand. After that, the others lost the desire to discuss all this. "I didn't know you." How scary Raven can be. Then, when everyone had finally calmed down and started training, the butler ran up to Raven. He looked very worried and upset, and told Raven to go quickly to the main gate. He didn't understand what had happened and tried to calm down abruptly, but then he saw a little boy behind him. He came up to Raven and asked, "Is that really Daddy?" Raven sat down at the table with the butler and couldn't believe that this little child was addressing him. Theo couldn't believe it. Did the leader really have an illegitimate child, just like in romance novels? And even the butler believed it and cried, not understanding when his boy managed to have a child. Raven didn't know how to explain to him that it was definitely not his child, because he was still a virgin. But it would be too embarrassing to say so. Moreover, that little child was still standing nearby, and Raven finally asked the boy where he came from. The boy started crying and thought that if he answered, his dad would throw him out. Raven had to say that it wasn't true, even though he really did intend to send the kid back. He asked the boy how old he was. He was 6 this year, and he actually looked a lot like Raven. It was obvious that this was definitely not his son, because Raven was only 24 years old, and he had just graduated from the academy 6 years ago. There was no way he could have a child. Raven had to calm everyone down and explain that this was not his son. But the child was still standing nearby, and Raven, looking at him, began to get nervous himself. Because this boy is almost an exact copy of him as a child, only the color of his eyes is different. But he can't be his child. While all this fighting was going on, Kate stood to the side and watched, thinking about what an idiot Raven was. Kate went to the academy with him and knows for sure. Raven studied enough to graduate from the academy at the top of his class. And after graduation, he immediately began participating in raids to subdue monsters. He was so busy that he didn't have time to play with girls like he does now, so the possibility that this is his illegitimate son is very small. It's good that in this situation at least one adequate person appeared who was able to calm everyone down. Raven left Theo and Danielle with the child and went off to discuss the situation. The details are still being clarified, but it turns out that this boy is a relative of Estella and is a member of the Viscount Chibest family. It seems that this family has a lot of debt because the head of the family has become addicted to gambling, so they most likely sent the boy here to sell. There have been several instances in the past where children have been sold to the head of the family, and it is not uncommon for aristocrats to adopt children, so they probably thought this would work. Although they say that they are adopted, in reality they are simply selling valuable children to rich aristocrats. At the moment, there is still too little information, but whatever Viscount Chibest's intentions, there is obviously no point in accepting them. If something bad happens, there will be no choice but to get rid of this child. But Raven couldn't agree with Kate because even if it was a problem, he wouldn't kill the child, and he couldn't do it to someone else. He reminded him of the promise Kate had made to him when they were children. Kate immediately apologized. They ended the conversation there and simply returned to their work. Raven knew it was his own fault that Kate had become like this. Kate Lopez, the heir of the Earl's family, is a family that has served the Dyer family since ancient times, and they would do anything to protect the Dyer family. After all, she is the only one who can handle the protective barrier that stretches across the continent, so members of the family often become landlords, not only within the empire, but also in other countries. The Lopez family, born to be loyal to the Deer family and willing to commit assassinations and other secret missions to protect them. That's why they are trained so thoroughly from childhood, and because of this, Kate used to be even more dangerous than he is now. Things have improved quite a bit, but it's still not perfect. Raven really doesn't want Kate to live a normal life. Meanwhile, Estella was busy with important matters in the library. She found 2 romantic books and couldn't decide which one to read first. One was called If I Could Be Your Servant, and the other was After I Changed Places with the Prince, My Heart is Beating Wildly. Asher appeared out of nowhere behind her. He realized she was having a hard time making a choice and decided to help. He said that if she wants to sleep with fun feelings, then let her read what is on the right. But if she is looking for a tense story, then the left one is better. He told her everything in detail because he had read these books a long time ago and received this knowledge from his ex-girlfriends. Estella, in gratitude, accepted his help and chose a book called After I Changed Places with the Prince, My Heart Beats Wildly. Asher was happy to help and also to watch the lady. He saw her several times at banquets, and she was like a cat curled up in a ball. Now, watching her, he immediately understood what she was trying to achieve and said that he knew a very good way to hint to his partner in such a situation. Estella responded to these words immediately. It was very sweet, and Asher began to understand why the captain was so worried. Asher told the lady that if pushing her partner didn't work, she could try pulling. Love would be concerned if someone suddenly acted so abruptly. Estella said that it had nothing to do with her. All because now she was afraid that if she showed Raven her feelings, he would decide to break the contract. But Asher didn't know that, and he didn't understand why the lady said that since it was obvious that she liked Raven. She wanted to say that it wasn't true and that she didn't like him, but she couldn't say it, even if it was a lie. Asher, because you said something wrong, just apologized. And as an apology, he suggested that she go to a good bookstore with a large selection. And he knows how to approach girls because Estella really liked this proposal. Sometime later, this little boy saw Estella and immediately ran into her arms because they knew each other. Estella was very surprised and asked Naru why he was here. And the boy reminded her that she promised to be his mother, and when she got married, she would adopt him. Estella couldn't go back on her words and apologize to Raven, but it was still a verbal agreement between her and Naru. She explained that this was the son of the Viscount's third wife, and his name was Naru Shebest. And the Viscount was the younger brother of Estella's father. In other words, this boy was her cousin. What about the verbal promise that worries everyone? The relatives gather at the mansion once a year, and at that time Estella met this child a year ago. She passed the time quietly and slowly, and suddenly he said that he would like Estella to be his mother, and he to be her child. She said that he already has a mother, and there shouldn't be 2. But Naru said that his real mother died when he was still little. Estella said she could be his mother if he wanted it so much. However, it is impossible now. It was a lot of trouble to deal with this child, and she said that she could adopt him when she got married, but then she didn't know that she would actually get married. In general, she has no other days, and she has not come up with any plan. She really regretted saying that. Only again the rest, even before she remembered her past life. Finally, the misunderstanding was resolved, but because there were people who still did not fully understand, Estella decided to joke that it was actually her son, along with Raven. It wasn't a very good joke, since he claimed that they had never met before in the first place. But she said she had seen him before, and they could discuss it when they were alone. She then left with the child to entertain him, while a room was being prepared for him. Raven looked at his wife walking away hand in hand with a child who looked so much like him. And this gave him a strange feeling. When night fell, Estella quietly entered the room to Naru, who was already asleep. She decided to cover him with a warm blanket so that he wouldn't catch a cold, but suddenly she saw marks on his body. After Naru's mother died, Estella knew that he wasn't being treated well. But what she saw now was obviously too much. She didn't know that he was being abused. The boy felt some presence, woke up himself. Estella asked him if it hurt somewhere, but he said no. Touching her lightly, the boy asked her, was it because he came without permission? Estella said that it was impossible for him to be angry, and that instead of having bad thoughts, he should sleep. Naru really felt sorry for him coming like this, and he apologized for bothering his sister. The next day, when it was time for breakfast, Raven, Estella, and Naru sat at the same table. Raven noticed that something was clearly wrong. Naru was acting strangely and seemed like he wasn't going to eat. But apparently the reason for his behavior was that he does not know how to use utensils. Due to carelessness, he dropped the knife. Now he was so scared and didn't know what to do, because usually after such mistakes there was punishment. His strong commas are because he is useless and makes mistakes. Naru expected to be hit, but Raven simply placed his hand on his shoulder to calm him down and said that he would cut the food for him himself. He slowly cut and showed the boy how to do it. I don't think the cutlery is meant for children, so it was difficult for him, so it's okay, even if he dropped the knife. Estella admired the way Raven was acting with the child. It was very cute. Naru was finally able to eat in peace, and after breakfast they went to play. Well, more precisely, not to play, but to have fun with the knights. Naru tried so hard that he was eventually able to use divine power, which was the first time in his life. After all, he is a relative of Charlene's family, so even at such an early age he turned out to be a genius. And when he grows up, he will definitely become a healer. Daniel approached the captain and offered to take this boy into the team of knights. He claimed that he would take care of this child. Daniel, although he looks unmarried, but in fact he has 5 children, and he is really very reliable. And he was dead serious about this boy joining in. Watching him, he realized that Naru was very good at recognizing adults' expressions, and at such a young age that wasn't the best skill. As for his family, now their own son has disappeared. No one even bothered to look for him. While Theo was entertaining Naru, Estella stepped away for a moment. She wanted to talk to Raven about it. She had a request regarding Naru. She wanted him to stay while she lived here too, but Raven refused her in all seriousness. He decided that this child would be returned to the Viscount's family. Estella tried to ask him again. You obviously, when the contract is completed, she will definitely take this boy with her and leave. However, no matter how many times she asks him, his answer will not change. He cannot protect this child. Even if his family was bullying him, Estella didn't understand why he would refuse if he knew about it. But Raven explained what greedy people would think. They would think that Naru was a poor boy and would protect him. If the people around him knew about this, they would establish contact with the Dyer family and continue selling children. Then, this scheme will spread even more, and because of this, children are exposed to such terrible things like this child. If Estella accepts Naru, there will be people who want to get closer to the Dyer family. But she doesn't know what terrible things will happen if Naru is sent back. She said that at least Charlene's family could protect him, but she needed permission from Raven's father. And then he asked why the Dyer family had to go to such lengths in Estella's situation. Had she forgotten that they weren't a real couple? It was just an enemy by agreement. For a moment, Estella couldn't say anything because of the lump in her throat. She admitted she was wrong, apologized, and said it wouldn't happen again. And Naru stood behind the door and heard all this. Then, when he met his sister to eat, he was initially overcome with doubts, but still, he forced a smile on his face and said he wanted to go home. Estella immediately realized that he must have heard her conversation with Raven. She said that if he didn't want to go home, then there was no need. He didn't have to worry about causing trouble for anyone here. Then he wouldn't have to go back to the Viscount's house. She might think of something, but Naru didn't want to make her sister uncomfortable. He said that he didn't like being here because the Viscount wasn't here and there were no toys either. It was boring, so he wanted to go home. There was nothing more Estella could do. The next day, she sent him home. Everyone who had gotten to know Naru during this time came out to say goodbye to him. It was very sad. As soon as his carriage left, Naru began to cry quietly. He doesn't really want to go home. He wants to be here with everyone, but he'd rather his sister not fight with anyone because of him. He convinced himself that everything was fine and he could handle it, because he had lived like this all his life. Raven didn't even come out to say goodbye to Naru. He spent the time looking at the family portrait. The butler reported that the boy had already left and asked the gentleman if he regretted it. When the butler looks at Naru, he continues to remember his boy as a child, a boy who was constantly getting hurt but could protect his servants. So isn't it okay to be selfish from time to time? The butler asked. Does Raven really not want to protect Naru? Raven really wanted to protect this child, but he can't take responsibility because he doesn't know how long he can live. And after he dies, it will be hard for everyone. So he can't do anything that would leave the problem unresolved because he won't be able to protect everyone until the end. So he thinks he made the right decision. And Estella decided to return to her home the very next day after seeing Naru off.